I'm gonna really go over this book slow. I like the way Spengler has a very poetic, kind of, even in the chapters, the titles, the subchapter, where he takes, he sums up the subchapter with a line from it. Of course, the whole different thing. Spengler is very influenced, as he mentions, his two muses, Nietzsche and Goethe, right? And the idea of looking at history from you say a philosophical or even a poetic view is sort of like the kind of like very German sort of outlook that boggles the Anglo empirical mind. But anyway, what a great writer in terms of how he writes. I want to go bit by bit. Right. Political horizon. Right. Is there today a man among the white races who has eyes to see what is going on around him on the face of the globe? To see the immensity of the danger which looms over this mass of peoples? I do not speak of the educated or uneducated city crowds, the newspaper readers, the herds who vote at elections, and for that matter, there is no longer any quality difference between voters and those for whom they vote, but of the ruling classes of the white nations, insofar as they have not been destroyed, of the statesmen insofar as there are any left, of the true leaders of policy, of economic life, of armies, and of thought. Does anyone, I ask, see over and beyond his time, his own continent, his country, or even the narrow circles of his own activities? Yeah, I raise my hand. I do. We live in momentous times. The stupendous dynamism of the historical epoch that has now dawned makes it the grandest, not only in the Faustian civilization of Western Europe, but for that very reason in all world history, greater and by far more terrible than the ages of Caesar and Napoleon. Yet how blind are the human beings over whom this mighty destiny is surging, whirling them in confusion, exalting them, destroying them. Who among them sees and comprehends what is being done to them and around them? Some wise old Chinaman or Indian, perhaps, who gazes around him in silence, with the stored up thoughts of 1,000 years in his soul. But how superficial, how narrow, how small-minded are the judgments and measures of Western Europe and America. What do the inhabitants of the Middle West of the United States know of what goes on beyond New York and San Francisco? What conception has a middle-class Englishman, not to speak of a French provincial, of the trends of affairs on the continent? What indeed does any one of them know of the direction in which his very own destiny is facing? All we have is a number of absurd catchwords, such as overcoming the economic crisis, understanding of peoples, national security, and self-sufficientness, with which to overcome catastrophes within the space of a generation or two by means of prosperity and disarmament. But it is of Germany that I am speaking here. Germany, to whom the storm of facts is more menacing than to any other country, and whose existence is, in the most alarming sense of the word, at stake. What short-sightedness and noisy superficiality reigns among us, and how provincial the standpoint when major problems emerge. Let us set up a ring-fenced Third Empire, or alternatively, Soviet state. Let us do away with the army or with property, with economists or with agriculture. Let us give maximum independence to all the little provinces, or alternatively suppress them. Let us allow the former lords of industry or administration to get to work again in the style of 1900. Or, why not, let us have a revolution, proclaim a dictatorship. Are there not dozens of candidates confident of their fitness for the job, and all will be well? But Germany is not an island. No other country is in the same degree woven actively or passively into the world's destiny. Her geographical situation alone. Right? So if I hear one more Englishman talk about, Hitler fought a two-front war, Germany is in between all its enemies. It always has been. It's been the battleground for greater powers when they were not a united land. Okay, this is what shaped the German mind of the last 3 centuries or more, and is never mentioned. I mean, that's my little input. Let me get back to this. The geographical situation alone, a lack of natural boundaries, make this inevitable. In the 18th and 19th centuries, she was Central Europe. In the 20th, she is again, as in after the 13th century, a frontier against Asia. For no country is it more essential that its sphere of political and economic thought should reach far beyond its own boundaries. Everything that happens afar involves the heart of Germany. Our past is having its revenge. 700 years of the petty provincial regime of small states with never a breath of greatness, an idea, an aim. This is not going to be made good in 2 generations. And Bismarck's creative work had the one great fault that he did not train the coming generation to meet the facts of the new form of our political life. The facts were seen but not grasped. Men could not inwardly adapt themselves to the new horizons, problems, and obligations. They did not live with them. And the average German continued to apply to his greater country the old particularist and partisan outlook, shallow and cramped, stupid and parochial. The small-mindedness dates from the time the Hohenstaufen emperors and the Hansa, the first whose vision ranged over the Mediterranean, and the second whose rule extended from the Scheldt to Novgorod, right, the North Sea, alike fell before the other and more securely based powers for want of wise and substantial backing from within their own frontiers. Right? And from that time on, the German has shut himself up in innumerable little fatherlands and petty local interests, measuring world history by his own horizon and dreaming hungrily and miserably of a kingdom in the clouds. To describe which condition the phrase German idealism was invented. To this petty and essentially German mode of thought belong almost all the political ideas and utopias that have sprouted from the bog of the Weimar state, the international, communist, pacifist, ultramontane, federal, Aryan visions of sacrum imperium, Soviet state, or Third Empire as the case might be. All parties now think and act as if Germany had the world to herself. Trade unions see no further than the industrial area. Colonial policy has always been odious to them because it does not fit in with the scheme of class war. In their dogmatic narrowness, they do not or will not comprehend that it was precisely the working man for whom the economic imperialism of the years around 1900, with its assured facilities for the sale of products and the purchase of raw materials, was the basic premise of its existence. This, the English workman had long before grasped. The enthusiasm of German democracy for disarmament stopped short at the frontiers of the French sphere of power. Never forget, Germany's greatest enemy was, for much of its existence as a nation, even before the Napoleon times, was the French. Okay? The Federalists would have already greatly reduced country split up again into a bundle of dwarf states of the old sort, thereby giving foreign powers the opportunity to play one against the other, right? That's the whole history of Germany. It was the battleground. It was these kingdoms that foreign powers around them would use, fight against each other, go through your major loss of life militarily in the 30 Years' War and all the catastrophes. These people bore the brunt of it. Okay? This shaped the German mind. Okay, for the last 500 years of history, no one ever recognizes this because everything we're reading is in English. Anyway, well. And the National Socialists believe that they can afford to ignore the world or oppose it and build their castles in the air without creating a possibly silent but very palpable reaction from abroad. I must say, I agree with this critique 120%. Anyway, that's we're going to go by the numbers here, so I keep these videos a little shorter. So it's going to take a while. So. But what is a while? The time is nothing compared to world history. Do you feel the seriousness coming through? Yeah.